Ready, set,
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Rich Dotson, here with my fellow nerds remotely are Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
And Garrett Price.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. In some semifinals, lost in the Scott Fish Bowl semifinals. That kind of hurt, but had a miraculous win this week in my oldest league, my 17-year-old Dynasty Leagues, the site that started Dynasty Nerds. Going into the Browns game, once after the kid that field goal, I was down 0.1 points.
0.1.
All I had was Brown. 0.1.
0.1.
All I had was Browns defense left. Yes, we still play with kickers and defense in this league because it's 17 years old and nobody wants to change it, even though I bring them for vote every year. In the whole game, all I needed was a sack or an interception. That's all I needed. And they didn't get one at all. To the very final drive of the game, the second last play from the game, they sacked the quarterback and Colt McCoy, and I ran around the house like I'd won a fantasy football championship. It was
I was nervous for the guy that you were playing that entire drive. I was like, there's no way that they're not going to sack him, or there's going to be a fumble, or there's going to be one of these stupid interceptions where they just chuck it downfield and a DB, makes a meaningless interception. And there it was, second last play. Myles Garrett pulls off the sack that ended up making you the victor in that one.
Yes.
Crazy.
Very crazy. Hey, fantasy football is a crazy game. We see it all the time. I saw a tweet today about the person that lost. He was up in the league by a half a point or whatever it was, or 0.45 points. And then Juju lost that fumble, and it was in PPR, and he got minus half a point and lost by 0.5 points because of it. I think Field Yates tweet out says this is the worst beat I've ever seen. I'm like, man, that's cold-blooded, man.
Oh, I lost a game by 0.04, so not even a tenth of a point. I lost by 0.04 of a point this week. I was super salty.
They're everywhere. You guys listening, you guys watching, you know what we're talking about. I mean, I got burned in my high stakes league, right? My most costly league that costs to get in there. They mocked me beforehand, like, you're not starting your boy Baker. He's on fire. And I'm like, I'm starting Jared Goff, man. Come on. I lost by 4.9 points or something like that, and Baker scored 5 more points than Jared Goff. That's an epic burn.
Brutal.
Yeah, that hurts for my love too. For my love. But he showed me. He's like, hey, I'm one of the
Don't
best
cheat
out
on
here,
me.
guys.
I would question your love after something like that, Richard. I don't know, man.
Hey, listen.
I think it's a facade. Personally,
I see things out here on like Twitter. People will talk like, oh, they see things through an Ohio State glasses or Browns glasses. Like, no, when it comes to drafting players and playing guys, there's no cloudiness here. When we rank rookies, it doesn't matter if they go to Ohio State. It does not. I want good players. I don't care where they play. They can go wherever they want. It does not matter to me. So I felt like Jared Goff had the better matchup versus the Jets. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, were the Ram fans wrong. Boy, were the people who bet on the Rams money line. Boy, were they wrong. About as wrong as the people that took the Steelers money line.
But you know who's absolutely right is Trevor Lawrence. He's loving life.
Yeah. No state tax in Florida, Trevor. Gotta love
That's
that
right.
one. Yeah. Not all tied up there in New York. So, and I had a good week. So I had a great weekend. Got to see some people I haven't seen in a while, safely, of course. And, just overall it was a good week. And I told my wife, I was like, man, there's a couple things that go right here at the end of this weekend is the Steelers could somehow miraculously lose to the Bengals, which I know it's not going to happen, but they'll really tie off this weekend. I was like, the Browns could beat the Giants. And then in my our oldest league, the 17-year-old league, I was like, I'm down huge. But for me to miraculously come back because of my 3 stud receivers and Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, and Robert Woods. And then I was like, also win my bets in my betting league on my bookie. You know what I mean? I made some big bets on my bookie. We're talking about it in about a minute. I took the Bills. I took the Browns, both individually big, and I parlayed them. Every single thing I wanted for the weekend to come great came to fruition.
Nice.
It's a Christmas miracle, guys.
It's good to be rich.
It's good to be Rich Dotson this weekend. I'm telling you. So today's show, we're talking buys. We're going to do 2 shows here. We're going to do buys and sells after the official fantasy season's over after this week. And on this show, we're going to do our sells. And on the Nerd Herd episode, which is next, is going to be our buys. We got 6 guys total for each show. Of course, we're going to be off next week like we are every year. We take that time off just to really decompress between New Year's and Christmas, doing 2 shows a day, 2 shows a week and run Dynasty Nerds and all this, and getting the information ready. It's a lot of work. It's a great time for us to be with our family and decompress. There's not a lot of Dynasty new moves to be made the week after Super Bowl. A lot of sorrow, a lot of glee, and a lot of focus. Spend that time in the Dynasty Nerds film room. That's the best advice I can give you. So we'll be off. We'll be off next week. But in the meantime, we're going to come back the new year. We're going to do our Dynasty Nerds Award show. We're going to talk some 2020, what we learned from 2020 in the Nerd Herd episode. Then we're going to do a 2019 rookie redraft the following week. And then we're going to do a 2021 way too early mock draft. Whew. So our shows are planned out for you. If you want to see where your team stands, of course, you use the Dynasty GM free to use. Go check it out. For 3 days, go check it out. But today we're going to talk about some sells. Okay, guys, Dynasty sells. And remember, a Dynasty sell, it doesn't mean you're selling a player because he's bad, right? It's just the game of Dynasty fantasy football. We talk about it all the time. Is like the stock market: when to get in, when to get out, what to hold, what to feel safe. Sometimes you move your stocks into safe assets. A stock like McDonald's, stock like Amazon, something safe, right? But you know what you're getting. The return's not too great. It's like Amazon right now is like a solid Robert Woods, right? Like what you're gonna get. You know what you're gonna get week in, week out. You feel good about it. Derrick Henry, he's like McDonald's. It's like week in, week out,
right, Matt?
Crushing.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So let's start the show off. Let's talk about some of these guys here. I'm gonna go first with one of my sells here. And one of my sells is going to be Aaron Jones, running back for the Green Bay Packers. And again, I think Aaron Jones is a dynamic running back. This is a guy coming out of UTEP a couple of years ago that I liked more than Jamal Williams when Jamal Williams was getting drafted ahead of him. And I thought he had a really good upside with his explosiveness and shiftiness. And it took a couple of years, but he actually did get into that light and become a running back 1. This year, Aaron Jones is running back 5 on the year. He's 26 years old, averaging 19 points per game. And he's only played in 12 games. So he's running back 5 still. He's only played in 12 games. And he has 180 carries, 968 yards, averaging 5.4 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, 41 receptions, 298 yards, good for 7.3 average and 2 touchdowns with 2 fumbles. And the reason I feel like Aaron Jones is a good sell in Dynasty is we talked about it last week about this plethora of young running backs in the NFL right now, and where they're more available than they've ever been. And we have a 2021 rookie class coming in, and Aaron Jones' future is kind of unknown right now. I know he just changed agents. That could be a sign of like he actually does want to stay in Green Bay, and his old agent couldn't make it work. So that could be a possibility as well. But at the same time, that's the only way I would not want to sell Aaron Jones. This would not be a conversation for me, is if somehow he would have already re-signed with Green Bay, or they were leaning towards signing them. But right now, they just signed their left tackle, Bakari, to the biggest deal ever, right? And they're already tight against the cap as it is. So I don't know how they're going to get this deal done when they're going to want to draft either first-round picks or even bring in another receiver. I know they got to sign their center, who's a free agent. The guy keep the offensive line together. And right now, their cap being so tight, I think it's a reason, with Jamal Williams being a free agent as well, that they drafted A.J. Dillon. You know what I mean? Like, they were worried that they're not going to re-sign Aaron Jones with the running back market and what Aaron Jones is going to command on the market. I mean, the guy's not taking less than $12 million a year. I can't imagine that. And at 26 years old, who knows what this market's going to be and who's going to be willing to pay a running back. And anytime we see these running backs change teams, they're hardly ever as dynamic as they were on their old team. A lot of times the scheme fit, and Aaron Jones fits the scheme perfectly, but so will the running back who they draft, if they draft the right guy, or they can find a guy cheaper in free agency, because there is a couple free agent running backs here that might be a little bit cheaper that they might want to pair with A.J. Dillon and not sign Aaron Jones. And for me, I think after the season where Aaron Jones is going to finish, you can still get a pretty good haul for Aaron Jones. He has 2 years of being a running back 1, a dynamic running back 1. And history tells us that window is about a 2 to 3 year window for dynamic running backs. So he's at the very tail end of that. Even if he does stay in Green Bay, coming in as a 27, 28-year-old running back, just now I think that the juice will never be higher for a guy like Aaron Jones. And I love to be in a fluid situation with my running backs. So I think he's a really good opportunity to sell for a guy whose running backs are depleted. Maybe they went into the season, they went in on Todd Gurley, who now we just saw got passed up by Edo Smith on the depth chart. The chance that he could re-sign somewhere. I'm not even waiting for him to free agency, though. This is a guy that I would like to, once the year is over, start to actively start selling and try and get, basically a mid-range to right around, I think you can get a 21 first and a 21 second, probably mid-range, which I'd feel pretty comfortable at, or at least try to flip for a running back I like and a draft pick. I don't know what you guys feel about Aaron Jones because he's a dynamic running back. It's just, I think the most important move in Dynasty is not when you sell your receivers, not when you sell your QBs, not when you sell your tight ends. It's when do you sell that running back and get out from under that so fragile floor that every single running back is. There's no exceptions here either. No running back is a guaranteed prospect year in, year out, no matter how good we think they are. I mean, right now, I would say the safest running back is a guy I like the least, and it's probably Derrick Henry. But a guy like Aaron Jones, to me, does not fit that mold. I think he's going to help be in the right system and the right scheme. And if he doesn't sign in Green Bay, I see his value drop significantly unless he went to a place like San Fran, who, again, I don't see them signing a big-time running back either. What say you guys on me saying Aaron Jones is a must-sell in the 2020 offseason?
I like that idea. I mean, I was one to – I thought he was a sell last year as well. So, him putting up pretty good numbers on top of the numbers that we thought he really couldn't even replicate last year with all the touchdowns that he had. I think this is a great opportunity to get out because, like you said, they don't have a ton of cap space. They went out and they drafted A.J. Dillon this past year. Sure, he hasn't performed much, but I don't know that that's going to change their mind because as of now, they're projected to be almost $18 million over the cap. And I know that those numbers can be massaged and all that, but it's basically a bottom 5 type of number in the league as far as cap space goes. So are you going to spend that on a running back where really, if you look back in history, it's not a very good investment making a big time investment in a running back who's 26 years old or really basically any running back that's up for a contract. Once you pay him, you're basically paying for past performance, not what you're going to be getting in the future. So I like the idea of selling Aaron Jones just because I feel like it's a bit of an unknown if he's going to sign back there. But even if he does, it's still what are you going to get out of him? 1 year, maybe 2 before everything just kind of starts falling off. So this is the time. This is the point where he's never going to get higher in value. It's only going to go down from here. So that's what makes him a sell in my eyes.
Yeah. And for draft, like I'm not looking to trade Aaron Jones for a draft pick. Really. I know I use that as compensation wise. Like I'm trying to grab one of these like young running backs, right? Like I'm trying to get a J.K. Dobbins. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get a DeAndre Swift. I'm okay doing that.
Are there any of the main rookie running backs right now you wouldn't trade for him straight up?
No, not one of them. Well, no, straight up wise, I'd want something back. Like if I got Cam Akers, like I'd want like a second back, like a mid second, and I'm willing to gamble on Akers. Just what I've saw the last couple of weeks. What about J. Rob, CEH, Taylor? I think James Robinson and Cam Akers, I'd probably want a second on top of Aaron Jones.
Okay.
Because I'm taking the youth. The rest you'll be straight up. DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Jonathan Taylor, I would do straight up for Aaron Jones.
Okay.
I'm taking the extra years. I might not get the same productivity, but I also might. You know what I mean? It's a gamble. And
that's the thing about the running backs, and that's why I'm with you guys on this. Even though I love to debate the points, I'm absolutely with you guys because with the running back position, if he has a great year next year wherever he goes, bummer, I missed out. If he has a terrible year and I hold on to him, all of a sudden he has no value to me at all anymore. And that's the thing with running backs. If I'm a year too early or maybe even, dare I say, 2 years too early, that stinks. I wish I would have known the right perfect time to sell, but I would rather be that than be a year or two too late. And then all of a sudden I get zero in return for him. So unless I am just absolutely loaded and the only weak spot is maybe my running back, so I want to hold on, that would be the only scenario where I'd even consider holding him. But I'm with you. I would much rather get out now than lose all value.
Yeah, it's the worst position to be left empty-handed with is a running back. It kills your team. You can get nothing in return. I mean, even a guy like Todd Gurley, who who was a running back 1, and people knew you couldn't sell that guy for anything for most leagues. And I think this offseason didn't help the running backs cause. We saw all these running backs sign these big contracts. Christian McCaffrey missed almost the entire year. Saquon didn't sign, but like Joe Mixon signed a big contract, misses the entire year.
Zeke did it 2 seasons ago, but we saw that with him this year.
Dalvin Cook signed his. He's fine. Austin Eckler signs his, misses most of the year. And there's one other guy too that I'm missing. Dalvin Cook's the only one to perform. Oh, and Derrick Henry performed too. So never mind. But it just hurts. I mean, it hurts. The salary cap drops like everybody expects it to this year, or not even go up. It's going to be hard for NFL teams to find ways to spend that extra capital on a running back, which some of these running backs are going to sign for less. And some of these guys are just okay, might get deals elsewhere. Somebody else might get maybe Todd Gurley signs for the minimum somewhere in a place like San Francisco just to prove that he can do it. You know what I mean? Something along those lines as well. So I think I'm with Garrett. I don't want to be left empty-handed with Aaron Jones. His value is just too high today. And when running backs get that value, I think next year I'm going to have the same conversation about Joe Mixon. You know what I mean? Like time to get out. It's just these running backs, when they hit this 27 years old, right? And they offer such a good return of running back 5 over back-to-back years. That's cream of the crop value. You can't miss out on that. And like I said, your league mates better than we do. And maybe you can get like J.K. Dobbins plus. Maybe you get DeAndre Swift plus for an Aaron Jones.
Cool.
You know what I mean? It's and that plus could be a 3rd round pick in this draft class. I'm okay. That plus could be a guy like Keelan Cole. Okay. Trevor Lawrence is going to be there. Maybe he resigns. You know what I mean? Like it's, or I can, you know what I'm talking about? Like it could be a plus with a long shot or a backup position. Maybe he's got 3 tight ends and you need a tight end. So give me Cole Kmet and J.K. Dobbins for Aaron Jones.
Ooh, I love Cole Kmet.
Something along those lines. I mean,
sure.
But do it. Make the move to get younger. You know what I mean? Like make these moves to get younger and offer upside. Go for upside here. So that's my Aaron Jones move. Matt, you got a player you'd like to sell?
So I'm going to stay kind of on the same vein, but maybe go a little bit bolder and go with a guy is Ezekiel Elliott, because I know a lot of people will question the picking of Ezekiel Elliott at this point. I mean, he is right now at this point of the year, he's running back 11 on the year. But if you dig in a little bit, I mean, on a points per game basis, if you look at him that way, he drops even further. He's down to 16. And all that stuff worries me a little bit. We all know that the Dallas Cowboys offense as a whole, and particularly the offensive line, has been pretty shooken up this whole entire year. So you don't want to discount it too much. But at the same time, this is a guy that's 25 years old. He's he'll be 26 come next season. So he's in the same age range as the Aaron Jones guy we were just talking about in the previous conversation. And it's not an indictment on Zeke saying, hey, he's done by any means. But I'm not sure that if you look into you look at his numbers, it was, last year was pretty good, but it was 2018 where he really topped off. He was 1,400 yards, 77 receptions for an additional 500 yards. He kind of had a little bit of a step back last year where he only had 1,300 yards and only 55 catches. And this year, the thing that worried me even most is when I watched him, he didn't seem to have the same burst that he had in the past.
He didn't look explosive.
He doesn't look explosive. Tony Pollard, on the other hand, pops off the page when you're watching him, still behind the same crappy offensive line. So at this point, I know it's kind of a gutsy move, but I think it's the best time to get out from under Zeke before you see something else. Another step back happens for him, and he kind of falls off a cliff. So I think right now he still holds a lot of name value, and he still presents good stats to back it up too. He's still a running back 1 at this point. So that's what makes him, in my eyes, a sell at this point.
And Jerry Jones coming out talking about Tony Pollard as well, and how he's a dynamic, explosive running back that needed to get in the field more. So we could be looking more towards like a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt kind of dual combo, a little bit more of like a Latavius Murray, Alvin Kamara combo there as well. And I mean, that would hurt Zeke a little bit. And we know that when you drop receptions, which is Tony Pollard looked great in the passing game, if you drop just those numbers just a little bit, it's a difference between being a running back 1 and a running back 2. It's the slightest difference there. And with all these young guys really starting to come on strong this year, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, the second half of the year, looks like all the running back that we've all hoped he would be by going to the Colts and having a guy like Travis Etienne come in. And does he end up in San Francisco? And a guy like Najee Harris, does he end up in Pittsburgh? You know what I mean? Like those two guys, there's a couple of running backs in this draft class that land in a really good spot that even though with this receiving class, this 21 is really strong, that they're going to get a front line movement because all of a sudden now we see Travis Etienne in San Fran, and we know what Kyle Shanahan can do with any running back. Raheem Mostert could be gone, and Pittsburgh clearly needs a running back. So there are situations that they're Miami having all this draft capital, what they're going to do and what they can do with the running back position. Again, more likely now I can see Miami sign a guy like Aaron Jones or one of these free agent running backs because they'll have the money and have so much young draft capital guys. I can easily see them draft a guy as well. So yeah, I'm with you here all the way. It's just, almost everything we said about Aaron Jones, right? Like just on the value is just so high. And right now, I mean, you can ask a lot of owners right now, a casual fantasy guy, who do you want, Aaron Jones or Zeke Elliott? They're going to say Aaron Jones.
Well, and that's kind of going to lead me to my main point here because Matt, I 100% with all of the analysis about Zeke. I am very worried about Zeke. I'm worried about that situation. However, I think overall the fantasy community has gotten hip to that. I think everyone in the fantasy community is now very, very concerned about Zeke. And so I think the tides have almost turned to the point where I think he's become so inexpensive. I put out a poll today of which running backs would you rather have? And it was a list of a lot of the main rookies. Joe Mixon and Jacobs were in there. So a lot of guys that would be in that tier. James Robinson was in there, CEH, Jonathan Taylor. Almost every single person that listed in there had Zeke either second to last or last out of all those guys. So people are saying right now, give me James Robinson, even though that situation's a little unsure, give me him over Zeke at this point. And so
the current market value has already crashed.
No,
I think it crashed too soon. Yeah.
No, I see. Here's where I disagree on this. I completely disagree.
You disagree with my disagree?
Yeah. Only because you're talking to the 11 out of 12 owners in the league that don't own Zeke. And sure. I know, I've talked to some Zeke owners about this and I'm trying to get their grasp on it. Like as a talk, like, for other leagues to make moves right now. And every single Zeke owner still feels that he is a top asset. And even though they feel like people are saying his market value is down, they will not sell for anything but what his market value was going into the 2020 season.
Then he's not a sell then. Because if that's what all the owners feel his value is and everyone else thinks his value is down here, then he's not a sell.
Yeah, no,
because you can't sell him for that price of what the owners think he's worth.
I'm just telling you what the owners think he's worth. You know what I mean? Like I agree with Matt. Like I think he's a sell. I just think if you do have him, like it might be a hard because he's not. I'm with Matt. Like at the same time, almost like Aaron Jones. Like I'm not giving either of those guys away, right? Like I want fair value in return. But I think with Zeke, I think the same compensation we were talking about Aaron Jones, I guess, is the same compensation I'd want from Zeke, but maybe like. Instead of like Cole Kmet, like Dallas Goedert. You know what I mean? Like
I think we're saying the same thing, Rich, because if I'm a Zeke owner, let's put myself in the Zeke owner's shoes. I'm not willing to sell him for what everyone is wanting to buy him right now, because that's just not there. So that's why I'm saying I don't think he is a sell because people aren't going to pay the price that I, as an owner, would think he is worth. So I think we're saying the same thing.
I mean, it's so league specific whether or not you're going to be able to sell the guy or not, and
it's just hard to sell on a guy so low right now.
It is. You find the right person though, who's not that low on him, and the deal gets struck. So I think there's a lot of different scenarios out there. In general, though, I do feel like this is not a bad time to get out from underneath him.
So if I agree with you, if you can get week 5 value for Zeke, what he was worth week 5, yes, I would absolutely sell if you can still get close to that. If it's what the market is right now, I don't think I could sell.
Yeah, I'm with Matt where I'm a seller too, but like I'm with Garrett. I agree with you at the same time. I think he's a hard commodity to sell right now just because of what you're going on return. People are feeling like Matt said, he's running back 11. We talked about him last week. He's running back 11. He didn't even play it last week. He's still running back 11. So the value's still there. And I think at the same time, when the dust settles, like his value will rise. You know what I mean? Like right now it's fresh in his mind. The season's over. People are like, yeah, look at Zeke. He
Dak's
didn't do
not back yet.
Dak's not back yet. So I also think like Zeke's somebody like Aaron Jones I want to get out of because he's a free agent, right? Like I can see that floor dropping completely. Zeke, if you can't get the right deal, I think you have enough time to wait till the start of the 21 season. And the first couple of weeks with Dak back, Zeke will look great. He'll still be a really good running back. And I think you could probably sell then for even a bigger commodity, right? Like, I think maybe like if you can't make the deal that you want now, like week 4 of the 21 season might be a really good time to sell Zeke, because then you can buy some of those.
Sure.
That'd probably be the easiest time to get some of those 2021 rookies well after your rookie draft was ended. And then you could probably grab, one of those rookie receivers.
They didn't start fast or something.
A really good second round pick guy you liked or something along those lines. That's where they make a move. I'm with Matt. I'm selling Zeke, but I'm selling him in the next 12-month window. It's not a must sell now for me.
Sure.
Garrett,
the first guy I'm going to talk about is I'm going to go over to the tight end position, and I am selling the tight end 1, the guy that's been the tight end 1 for 5 straight seasons. Yes, it seems crazy to sell a guy that has been that consistently good, but we're at the point now where how much longer can he do this? And there are teams out there that are so desperate for tight end. There are teams that just absolutely need a tight end. There's only so many good ones to go around. There's only 3 or 4 guys that you feel confident in. Then there's another 3 or 4 that you're hoping can get to that point that you're confident in them, but you're not really sure if you can. But everyone knows that Travis Kelce is always good. He always has been good. He is, I think, fantasy football wise, for the tight end position, he's probably the GOAT. He's probably the greatest fantasy football tight end we've ever had. So it's really difficult to just say, oh yeah, I'm going to part ways with that guy. However, if you're not a tried and true, absolutely, I'm looking on my Dynasty GM and I'm 1 of 1 in contender for next year, that's a guy that I'm looking to sell, because when is that going to fall off? When is it going to get to the point where, he's 32 years old next season? At some point, those wheels have to fall off, especially at a position that's as physical as the tight end position is, as in high demand. He's not going to be getting any faster. Injuries could easily creep up. We've seen it for a lot of tight ends that are around his age range. So I'm looking to get out now while I can still hype him up as the guy, the GOAT at the tight end position. And I'm trying to cash in right now.
Rich, do you remember 6 years ago on the podcast when we were like, look, Travis Kelce's great, but get out from underneath him. He's had a million knee surgeries, blah, blah. And he just keeps.
It was 4 years ago.
It probably was 4 years ago. But a couple years back, I was in, it was our super flex that we're in for Dynasty Nerds. I won the championship my first year in that league, but the team was kind of starting to disintegrate around him. And I made the move to get out from underneath Travis Kelce, and I got a huge haul. But I could have easily held on because he lasted a little bit longer.
He's been Julio Jones.
I just bought him for a 21 first in that league to go
in that same league
title, and I lost this week with a massive game. Oh,
but like Garrett pointed out, 30, he'll be 32 come next season, and
9 surgeries I believe he's had.
Right. So age is undefeated. We know it. It's going to eventually creep up on him. The production you're getting from him, or have been getting from him from the past 5+ years basically, has been absurd. So to think that he's going to just fall off completely off a cliff is probably it's probably not going to happen that way, but I do see a decline. It's got to be coming, don't you think? I mean,
to be fair, he just signed that contract extension with Kansas City, so
which is a selling point.
I know. So he's there for probably, let's say, 2 more years. You're going to have 2 more years of tight end 1 numbers. I agree with Garrett. He's the GOAT. Odds of him being tight end 1 next year are still high end. Because again, and here's the only problem with it though, is if you have Travis Kelce, your team's probably a legit contender. Because either one, if you're not, you probably sold him this mid-season, or you had him because if he's on your team, you're a contender. I mean,
he's a difference maker. He's that big of a difference maker at the position.
He's a player. I said, if you look at all the teams that made the playoffs, I'd say if you look at the best team in almost every league, I would almost guarantee Travis Kelce was on that team because he's that much of a difference maker. He's averaging 20.6 points per game. The second closest is George Kittle with 16.4. And the next guy who's been on fire lately is Darren Waller with 15.8. After that, you drop down to TJ Hockenson, who's averaging 12.4. So we're talking a difference here of 8 points per game between arguably like
1 and
dynasty
4.
tight end too. You know what I mean? And TJ Hawkinson.
Travis Kelce's 1. Robert Tonyan is number 3 and
Yep.
he's got the difference is like 125 points. 125 points between 1 and 3.
Crazy.
I mean, that is just ridiculous. And that's through week 15. So, I mean, do the math on that. He is such a difference maker at that position that, I mean, it's almost like you're cheating. You basically have another person in your lineup. You basically are
playing two tight ends.
You're playing 2 tight ends, and the
and
other team only gets 1.
That was through week 14. I didn't update it. Waller's averaging 16.8 now, and then Tonyan and Hawkinson both averaging 11.7.
Right.
And yeah, it's a hard one to sell. I will say that because he's such a difference maker. But here's the move I would make in that scenario, right? So let's say you have Kelce, you're a contender. I think the move here is to go after TJ Hawkinson. I think that's the move, right?
Yep.
You go from a 32-year-old to a guy who's 23, a guy who doesn't have a lot of players coming back next year on contract as of right now, none of them at receiver. He is averaging about 9 points less per game than Travis Kelce. But we also would expect Hawkinson's numbers to go up next year as well. You know, no Marvin Jones or Kenny Galladay, one of the two. We know Kenny Galladay's been there all year, but we'd expect him to go up a little bit more too because he's only 23 in doing this. And he should be more of a focal point of that offense next year with a new head coach that hopefully brings in what we see most of these new coaches are running, that Kyle Shanahan system, which is, again, they focus on the tight end. So Hawkinson has a position here, has a chance to even be a more focal point of any offense they bring in next year in Detroit. And right now, I think you'd find a lot of hard-pressed owners that are contending, so it's got to be the right window here, that wouldn't trade you a guy like TJ Hawkinson. I'd be a little worried about Darren Waller. He is only 28, but like even then, that's not a huge step back from Kelce. But I think with Kelce, with the move here is you just can't sell Kelce for like rookie picks or something like that, because all of a sudden you go from a contender not to a contender.
You need a good tight end in return.
Yeah, and I don't recommend it at all. So what do you guys think here? My number one choice would be Hawkinson. I'd be okay with Mark Andrews. But again, I think with all these guys, I'm trying to get like a second back maybe, but like
maybe even
Mark
a first,
Andrews,
depending on the player.
I was definitely you could get most of those guys and something on top. I would to the right
second
person.
Yeah, but I'm like you're not getting a first for any of those guys on top of
Goddard.
You know what I mean?
Goddard would be another guy that I'd be looking at.
I would love to get Goddard. Upside. Yeah, I feel like Goddard and like maybe Goddard you could flip from your second round pick to his first round pick, maybe like move up in the draft, kind of one of those moves. Like, hey, I'll give you Kelce in my second for Goddard in your first, and then you can use that first on Kyle Pitts and go back and go double up and double down.
That is the nicest part about making this deal, and that was going to be my final thing that I brought up is if there's a class that you could potentially get some players that could help fill that gap, this is the class to do it. Freiermuth, Jordan, and then obviously Kyle Pitts is the one. Even if you haven't been paying attention to college football, you've heard about him. Those three guys are all very good tight ends. All could be first-round guys. If not, they're going real early in the second.
Yeah, good move to make. So another point well taken here. I like to move, Garrett. My next guy on the list here is Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver 20 on the year. He's only 24 years old. And you're just going to probably sit here going, Rich, what are you talking about? A 24-year-old wide receiver one just a couple of years ago, you're going to try and sell it at 24? Yes, I'm selling Juju Smith-Schuster. This is a guy who struggled without Big Ben last year. And I know he was banged up, but I mean, I saw a lot of bad route running. I saw some drops from him. And this year he's wide receiver 20, but he's not doing it like dynamically. He's had a couple of big games here and there. And then without Big Ben, he only had 552 air yards. And right now, I don't see him re-signing in Pittsburgh. Now with their cap situation, not with having Deontay Johnson, now with having the emergence of Chase Claypool. I know James Washington's a free agent, right?
I think he has
one more year.
One more year. Yep.
So even more so not to re-sign Juju Smith-Schuster, which they historically don't do. They just draft new guys. So what are the odds that he lands in a better situation? First of all, again, we see these receivers. Receivers probably the easier position to probably transition and learn over time to become still a solid production at, because it's not going to be necessarily a scheme fit like a running back. But like, what are the odds that he's going to land in a better situation than he was in now that needs a receiver? I mean, if he goes somewhere, you think Juju's going to take money, be a number 2 to Devontae Adams? I don't. We just talked about them. They're up against the cap as it is. You know what I mean? So like maybe he goes to Miami potentially.
The bummer for his value was one of the main ones that he was linked to was the New York Jets. That was one of the biggest ones he was linked to. And now it looks like they don't have Trevor Lawrence anymore. So that took a hit for sure.
So I don't think that'd be terrible because he still has Sam Darnold. I'm not out on Sam Darnold yet.
Sure.
He's still,
or Justin Fields. It could be Justin Fields as well.
It could be Justin Fields as well. I don't think they would go that route. I think they would go offensive tackle personally to protect Sam Darnold. And they have Denzel Mims. So I think Juju would be opposite of there, which I think that's what Juju needs in the first place. Like, I don't like Juju as the number 1, right? Seeing that number 1,
let him go back to the slot and do all that.
I think that's where he operates best out of the slot. Once he was pushed into a number 1 role, you just didn't see the same kind of production from him. Obviously, there was a lot of circumstances surrounding that, like Big Ben was out and they were shuffling a bunch of quarterbacks last season. But this season, he hasn't been anything special, like you were saying. He's just
Washington would be the other place I wouldn't mind seeing him.
Be a good spot for him.
Terry McLaurin, and they got the money and
yeah, that's another spot I can see him signing with.
But they still don't have a good quarterback there.
They don't have a quarterback there.
That's
exactly.
the tough part.
But to your sell point, though, Rich, what do you expect to get from a guy like Juju?
First,
you would think that you could still get a first for him.
100%. He's
I think
24 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, he's wide receiver 20. You know what I mean? It's not like he had a terrible year. So you're not selling a guy who like just bombed completely this year. Like, I think for most people, they would look at Juju and said, okay, with like an up and down year with Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool coming around, like he finishes wide receiver 20, like a mid-range wide receiver 2, who's about like you're selling it to the point you're like, dude, you're talking about a guy who's about to enter free agency. Like he finishes wide receiver 20 in a crowded wide receiver field with all those guys, Washington, Claypool, Johnson. Now he's like, your selling point is like, he's going to go sign somewhere. He's going to get paid. So he's going to be there for a while. He's going to be the number 1. Look what he did a couple of years ago as a number 1. Obviously he wasn't. It was Antonio Brown was a number 1, but you sell that. You know what I mean? You keep going. And to me, I think you can easily get a first. And not only that, I think you probably get like a mid-range first for a guy like Juju as well. And for me, Juju's I've seen 2 years in a row out of a receiver that was good, who's not that great anymore. Like I look at Juju and I kind of look at him as where he is now is like kind of what he is, like a wide receiver 20 to 26, somewhere around. Not bad, right? Not a bad receiver, but I think for that value, I would rather get that mid-range first and shoot for upside, right? I would rather gamble on a guy. Definitely if I'm not a championship contender, I don't need Juju. That's changes everything. But like if I'm struggling here, like I'm going for upside. Like I don't think Juju offers that upside that I'm looking for out of a number 1 receiver. And if you're the middle of the road team, he's the perfect access to sell. And on top of that, Matt, I think you probably get first and something on top of that for Juju potentially. Like just again, a throw-in player to offset, maybe like a Preston Williams who offers some upside. You know what I mean? Like something along those lines. I would even take a guy like, not Nelson Aguilar, never mind. But you know what I mean? Like
Not
a player
so
that
fast, sir.
Well, you got to find a buyer. You got to look at his roster and you'll see it when you see it, the commodity that he'd probably be willing to throw in. Or honestly, I would take a first and third out of this draft class because there'll be a receiver there in the third you can gamble on.
Sure.
So I think this draft class is strong enough where you could find that receiver in this draft that can offer you the upside that Juju won't be able to. A guy like Justin Jefferson, a guy like CeeDee Lamb. I think this draft is full of guys that offer that upside in the right situation. And I expect Kyle Pitts to go high. If you're in a super flex league, I would take any first round pick whatsoever for Juju. It doesn't even have to be mid-range. But I think some running backs are going to get moved up like they do every year. Well, we're talking about 2-3 now, probably 4 by the time we get to April. And I think some of these receivers are going to fall down a little bit, and there's going to be really good value, just like we saw this year with Justin Jefferson going later, guys like T. Higgins going late, Denzel Mims, you know what I mean? So like there's really value there in the mid to late first at the receiver position. And I would take every one of those guys right now over Juju. Every one of those guys, T. Higgins, Denzel Mims, Michael Pittman Jr., I would take all those guys ahead of Juju Smith right now if I'm doing a startup. So why not just do it in next year's class, which is arguably just as strong at receiver as this class was?
Fair enough. All right. So my next guy, I kind of wish I would have flip-flopped these so we weren't running back, wide receiver for me and Rich. But my guy is Terry not Terry McLaurin.
I was going to say, you shut your mouth.
You shut your dirty mouth, Matt O'Hara.
It is Amari Cooper, though, who was right above Terry McLaurin, which is why I said Terry McLaurin, because I was reading the name below. But
I'm saying sell Pat Mahomes and Superflex.
Woo! Sorry, he was the top of the list. I don't know. I was looking. But anyway, like I said, Amari Cooper just bordering on the wide receiver one conversation this year. And again, same kind of conversation that we had with Zeke. The whole offense as a whole was down in the dumps. So you're saying, why the heck would you sell the guy then? He's got nowhere to go but up. When you dig in a little bit, this guy, I mean, the air yards really aren't there. I think he's in the 40s or something like that as far as air yards, or darn near close. I had it right here in front of me, but I lost it. Regardless, he's down there 35, 40, somewhere in that range. But when you dig in even more and you look at the guys on his team in particular, the differential between the snap shares of him and CeeDee Lamb are just, Amari Cooper's getting almost 87% of the snap share to CeeDee Lamb's 69%, if you round. And the production is not that far off. So I think if you watch the game, if you watch any Dallas games, you can obviously see that CeeDee Lamb is just a much more dynamic player. So in my eyes, it's only a matter of time before Amari Cooper, with his big bloated contract, is moving into a different situation on a different team. And from there, I still think he's going to maintain value and be a good player. I'm just not sure there's going to be as much hype around a guy that's not in Dallas, is not with Dak Prescott, and you just don't kind of know where he's going to land. Rich is not buying it.
I ain't buying it. For me to sell Amari Cooper, you got to pay the bucks. I mean, this guy, here's why. He's 26 years old. He's on a contract. He's going to be leased in Dallas. I know we talked about CeeDee Lamb. I'm not even arguing where I don't think CeeDee Lamb will be the number one guy there. Like, I'm not even making that argument. But Amari Cooper, and I think we've seen in today's day NFL, you get 100% support two wide receivers. It's an easy thing to do these days. We see it right now with Minnesota, and a guy like Kirk Cousins has Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 8, Adam Thielen wide receiver 12 on the year. Like you said, Amari Cooper is wide receiver 13, right on the outside looking in.
Where was Justin Jefferson?
Jefferson was wide receiver 8, Matt. You knew
that.
That
talk to me.
PPR leagues.
Checking.
So to me, Amari Cooper, 6'1", 26 years old, signed a good contract, wide receiver 13 with Andy Dalton and all kinds of crazy things. Like I said, it's kind of funny because we're talking about Zeke, down, like he's still borderline. He's a running back 1. Amari Cooper with all the things going wrong here and bringing in CeeDee Lamb and still having Michael Gallup and the emergence of Dalton Schultz, still wide receiver 13. Amari Cooper is one of the most dynamic route runners in the NFL, and that always wins and always equals fantasy production. So for me, I don't view Amari Cooper as I'm not selling him, right? Like I can't sell him. But if you want Amari Cooper off me, and you're like, you listen to podcasts and listen to Matt, like you're paying mucho bucks for Amari. Like he's a second round startup guy for me.
I think that's why you sell him, because he can still grab you mucho bucks.
I know, but it had to be a complete blow up for me to sell him. Because even if I'm in the middle of the road, he's young enough to be there in 2 years at 28 to help me get where I need to be. You know what I mean?
That was going to be my question. Do you think he's going away? Is that the reason that you're selling him?
I'm not sure that he's going to. Rich says you can support 2 wide receiver ones, but for how long? I mean, is that like something you could do year in and year out, or is Amari Cooper the guy that's going to fade into the wide receiver 2 conversation? He's there. He could be there for the next 3-4 years, and then you got this guy that was worth 2 first-round picks. All of a sudden, he's faded down to this wide receiver 2 territory, and now you're talking Juju Smith-Schuster. Maybe you're going to get a 1. Maybe you're going to get a 1 for him. One.
I think Amari Cooper is in a completely different class when it comes to wide receivers than Juju Smith-Schuster. I really do. I think we forget, like, man, like going back and watching his college tape, like how good he was coming out. As a route runner.
A lot has happened between his college tape and now, though.
Well, he had the drop issue there for about
the drop issues
15
for a while.
months. But that hasn't popped his head back up lately. Like I haven't seen that here in 2020. I don't have a problem with selling Amari, but I don't look at him as a sell. I guess in the grand scheme of things, Matt, like, of course I'll listen because anybody's a sell, right?
Sure.
Like anybody's a sell. It's just for me, like, I'm not as worried. And you said, I think year in and year out, the way how much Dak throws it. I mean, Dak was on pace for like 8,000 yards this year, right? Like, and they said Mike McCarthy and
he legitimately was like close to 6,000. You know
what I mean? So
projection.
Like Amari Cooper's number would be going through the roof. I mean, look, other guys are even close at wide receiver twos. I mean, Cole Beasley right now is wide receiver 16. Stephon Diggs is wide receiver 3. You know, so there's are 2 other receivers. Got DK Metcalf, wide receiver 5. Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 11. So I think it is pretty common in today's day and age where you can see stuff. This Robert Woods, wide receiver 10. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 19. So I think there's room for Amari and CeeDee Lamb. I think Michael Gallup's the guy out there. I think Michael Jones wants to put on a show, and I think Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are going to be part of that show with Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott.
All right. Well, I get my main concern is that Amari Cooper is going to go from this borderline wide receiver 1 that he is now to a guy that's in a middle wide receiver 2, and there's just not going to have the same value. And that's the reason that I would want to sell him now, because he still holds that wide receiver 1 value.
I listen to that. If you believe that, then I'm 100% with you. Like, try and always get that return. I just don't like. I would just disagree.
Don't believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe it. I think he's going to be a very solid receiver for the next 3 years, at least, like really good years. Like, I'm looking to sell Amari Cooper like
29, 30.
Yeah, like I feel like next year, like CD takes a big step forward and Amari retracts like wide receiver like 8, 7, right around there. And then I'm riding him for another year. And then I'm even entertaining more offers. I actually, Matt, think his value is going to go up in 2019. And I'm looking to sell Amari.
In 2019, you think it's going to go up?
Yeah.
That's bold.
Marty McFly style. They'll have him my DeLorean and go back there and buy him. But I think his time to sell would be as he gets closer to the point where like Dallas can move on from him. You know what I mean? Like that's where I get, because anytime as long as he's tied to Dak with CD to offset him, I think he's gonna have I actually think he has a better year in 2021 than he does in 2020. So I feel like you're selling now, you're going to sell yourself a little short. Personally,
right, just forget it. Just sell Cole Beasley. He's wide receiver 15. It's ridiculous. It's never going to maintain that, man. Just sell him.
There it is. Close this out here with your last guy.
Well, before we get to my last guy, we do have one additional sponsor that we want to talk about, and that is our guys at PredictionStrike.com. They've been with us quite a bit this year. They've seen us through the times where I was hyping up DJ Dallas. They saw us through hyping up Justin Herbert. Now it's time to hype up Jalen Hurts. And you know what? Honestly, we're not that far away from getting to hype up all of these rookies. In the 2021 class. Man, if you can get in there and get their stocks before they even, get a chance to step on the field, you could see the profit margins for some of those guys just shoot through the roof. And that's our friends at PredictionStrike.com. You have the opportunity to get shares of these players from day one. Imagine if you had all of those guys. Imagine if you had these superstar players and you got their price when they were just wee little rookies. That's what you can do at PredictionStrike.com. So get started today by visiting PredictionStrike.com and sign up with the code Dynasty to get an additional $10 off your first deposit of $20 or more. That's PredictionStrike.com, code Dynasty for an additional $10 off your first deposit of $20 or more. All right, we'll get into my final guy here. And originally I had their order switched, but since we had talked about 2 running backs earlier, I didn't want to go 3 for 3 on running back. So I saved him for the tail end. But I think it's time. And actually, we talked about selling this guy at the beginning of the season. So hopefully you did sell this guy then as opposed to now. But Alvin Kamara, I'm looking to get out from Alvin Kamara. And that's tough because he's been a top 3 or 4 guy all season long. But I think we've started to see a glimpse into what life could be like maybe without Drew Brees. And it's a little bit scary. Now, part of that is the Taysom Hill effect. If it's not Taysom Hill and it's a different quarterback, would have the same effect on him. But we know that so much of his value is predicated on catching the football. So if there ends up being any quarterback that comes in there and is not willing to check it down nearly as often as Drew Brees was, all of a sudden that value is not there because he's only running for, 40 yards a game, 30 yards a game, 55 yards a game. Like his value is not between the tackles.
He's got 777 yards rushing and 739 yards receiving. So he's real close on both of them.
Exactly. So I'm worried, and he's hitting that same age threshold as we're talking about with Aaron Jones and Zeke. He's in that exact same range. And could you be getting out a year too early? Absolutely. But I want to get out a year too early as opposed to getting out a year too late. I am worried about him. I do want to get guys like Jonathan Taylor. I do want to get guys like J.K. Dobbins. And with how much value he still holds, even probably over Zeke and Aaron Jones at this point, I think you can get J.K. Dobbins and get yourself a first-round pick in this year's draft, or at least something close to that. So that's the guy that I think I want to sell before it gets too late.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to sell a guy like Alvin Kamara. Drew Brees might come back next year. From weeks 10 through 15 in PPR leagues, he was running back 4. If we go over to we go from week 11 on, I don't know when did he get hurt, Drew Brees? You remember?
It was right around then, 10.
Yeah. So from week 11 to 15, he moved all the way down to running back number 9 overall. Which again, he's literally right ahead of Melvin Gordon there. From weeks 11 to 15, Alvin Kamara averaged 0.4 more points than Melvin Gordon over the last 5 weeks, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So over the last 5 weeks, Alvin Kamara's averaged 0.4 points more than Melvin Gordon. Running back number 9, Melvin Gordon max running back 10. Melvin Gordon's one of the guys I talked about early in the years, like one of the best values at running back in Dynasty, where you can get like that running back 1 for super cheap. And like Alvin Kamara's price is looking at a price tag of like 3 firsts, right? That's what you're looking at to buy a guy like Alvin Kamara. I'm with you, Garrett. Like, I think with his type of running back, who's a PPR running back, he holds value longer.
Sure.
He'll always be that PPR running back, right? So like there'll be times where he could be taken away, essentially. And for me, it's worrisome where, hey, I'm testing the market as well. And to see what I can get for what most guys consider a mid-range first-round startup pick. So, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think the return on a guy like Alvin Kamara is pretty much endless, right? Like, I don't see why you can't go. Like, Matt, I know this is a question for you that you would say yes to, but I want to see if it's easier for you. Would you trade Alvin Kamara today straight up for Justin Jefferson?
I mean, obviously it would have to be a playoff contender type of situation to do that. And I would make that move if I had to, but I wouldn't like it at all. If it would have to be the exact perfect right scenario for me to make that move. And
I know it's hard going from running back to receiver. I'm just talking about like a perceived value. And obviously your team always makes a deal but remember, like, it's easier to fill that running back hole than it is to fill that wide receiver 1 hole.
Absolutely.
Like, it's the easiest hole to fill. I mean, again, you could have traded for Melvin Gordon for a 23 first, right?
I'll put it this way.
You couldn't trade for Justin Jefferson and you get equal value.
I'll put it this way. There's probably 20 scenarios I could think of where I would not trade Justin Jefferson, and like one that I would trade Justin Jefferson for Kamara straight up. So that's, in most
typically you're taking Jefferson first.
Absolutely. Most scenarios I would definitely take Justin Jefferson before. So to piggyback off your other point though, Rich, the weeks 11 through 14, when Drew Brees was out, Kamara on a points per game basis was only running back 16 overall. So he was not
So
turning
it was even lower because some guys got hurt or some guys were missing time because of bye weeks or whatever.
Absolutely. I said it in the beginning of the year. If you guys remember it, I said it on every national podcast. I was like, is Alvin Kamara, we're promoting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? I use this comp every single time on every guest show I did and every show we did. I said, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire the best running back in his class? No, he's not. I was like, but is Alvin Kamara the best running back in the NFL? Absolutely not. But he's just in the right system and the right scheme. And we saw if anything breaks in that system or scheme, it can have drastic effects on that player. It can make Alvin Kamara more of an Austin Eckler, JD McKissick. I mean, there's other guys that could do. Kamara is fantastic at what he does. This is not a knock on Kamara. I'm kind of with you, Garrett, where like we've already seen some dents in this armor, right? Like we see where this can go, where Alvin Kamara can go from running back 1 overall, 2 overall to running back 9 to 16, somewhere in that range. Right. And those guys, you can find those guys at a yearly, but you could have got James Robinson for less. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'd feel more comfortable moving for a guy. If I move Kamara, I'm going big, right? Like, I am going big. I'm shooting for
go get Devontae Adams. Go get, or a younger receiver, even Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I don't want to. That's the thing. I'm not trading a young running back for like Devontae Adams, right? Like a 28-year receiver, wide receiver 1, unless if I can afford to lose him. But I'm going for a Justin Jefferson, right? Sure. A guy who I think is going to be a wide receiver 1 potentially for the next 7 years.
AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. Yeah,
exactly. Those kind of guys for Kamara. It's what I'm doing. And then I'm finding a way in this draft. I'm just going to draft a running back, right? Because then you gotta imagine you're not losing those Kamara points. You're just putting them in the receiver position. So you're not people like, oh, I can't lose that. Like, you're not losing it. Like, you're putting those points in a safer stock, right? Just like we mentioned,
you're securing them long term is what you're doing in just a different position.
In a better stock. Like, you're flipping the McDonald's stock for the Amazon stock, or the Walmart stock for the Tesla stock. You know what I mean? Like, something along those lines. Like, you're moving those points just to a different position. That's all. Like, you're not some people are like, oh, I can't lose those points at running back. Like, you can add them to your receiver position and then go draft a running back. Again, remember in Dynasty, the easiest position to fill on your roster is a running back position. Because then even going next year, if you're a contender, you could trade for guys that are Melvin Gordon, for example.
Wayne Goldman was great for a while. Now he screwed me this week, but he was great for a while.
For the push. You could have paid it for J.D. McKissick when Antonio Gibson went down for that playoff run. There's always those guys that will be helpful late in the season that hold no long-term value.
Give a second or third. Yep.
And all you got to do is give a second. And you're overpaying, but you're going to come away with the title, and that's all that matters, right? You're not going to do that at receiver. You're not going to find that guy that's going to be that big point game, because nobody's selling those guys, right? Nobody's selling those guys.
And they just don't have. I mean, the running back, the players come out of nowhere because of all the injuries that happen at that position. Yeah, exactly.
Look at these guys. Weeks here it is. The top 12 running backs from weeks 11 to 15, the last 5 weeks. So from the right before the playoff push through the playoffs. Here are the running back ones in order. And tell me which ones of these guys you couldn't buy. Derrick Henry, running back 1, couldn't buy. Running back number 2 overall, who averaged the most points per game, David Montgomery.
Could have bought him.
100% could buy him. All you do is give up a first-round pick. I guarantee you could have got David Montgomery. Running back 3, Dalvin Cook, can't buy him. Running back 4, Nick Chubb, hard to buy. 5, Jonathan Taylor, hard to buy. 6,
well, you might have been able to week 11 because he was coming off his cold stretch.
Well, you're right. Week 11, you probably could have bought him. Number 6, James Robinson, you could have got him. Number 7, Aaron Jones. Maybe not. Number 8. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 8, Kenyon Drake. 100% could have bought him.
Definitely.
9, Alvin Kamara. Couldn't have bought him. 10, Melvin Gordon. Could have bought him. 11, Austin Eckler. Maybe could have bought him.
I think
number 12, J.D. McKissick.
For sure.
So there are 12 running back ones there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Half of them you could have bought for your championship push. You ain't buying Justin Jefferson. You know what I mean? Like, so
and by the way, Tony Pollard's 14, so you could have definitely had your share of him as well.
Yeah, and guys behind him, guys like Cam Akers at 13 could have bought him. Mike Davis at 16 for a rental could have bought him. Naheem Hines at 20 could have got him free. Chase Edmonds was running back 22. Latavius Murray 24, running back 2. So I think the point here is like, it just more proves the point of how fluid running back should be, because as impossible it is to replace a guy like maybe like Alvin Kamara may seem, you got to remember all you're doing is transferring those points to a safer position long term. If I can get CeeDee Lamb plus for Alvin Kamara, I'm doing it. If I can get Justin Jefferson straight up, Kamara might go higher in a startup, and I'm fine with that. But I honestly would rather take Justin Jefferson and then figure out my running back position, right? Because now all of a sudden I have another receiver. Hopefully I have another receiver in my roster. Now I can sell to move up in the draft to grab that running back. I would rather do that move right now because I'm agreeing with you, Garrett. I think it's a sell as well. Like I have no problem selling them. I have no problem holding them, but
for the right move,
there's not many running backs I'm not selling, I guess is what the point is.
I mean, I think I was a little bit on the fence, but then when I saw his actual numbers when Drew Brees was out and just the prospect of Drew Brees, not coming back at all. Yeah, we have absolutely no idea. I think it's a great time right now to get out from underneath him.
I mean, is there any running back you would not sell right now? Is there any running back you would not sell?
Or DJ came up lame.
I
right?
know.
What happened?
Special teams, man.
Yeah.
Apparently though, they carted him off, air cast and all that, but it sounds like no legitimate damage.
Yeah.
So it should just be like a week to week thing. So he dodged
just
the
being
bullet.
extra precautious. Good. That's what I like to hear.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's it. That's our last show of 2020.
Get this over with.
Been a hell of a year, guys, gals, to say the least. But, just like anything that comes through tough at you at life, we pulled through. We're still here. Be thankful to still be here. Be thankful that, we're still having an opportunity to play fantasy football. Be thankful that we got to watch football as a whole. We had a big series in, again, like, what do you do if there's no seeing? There's no season. So like every year, there's a lot to be thankful for. And, I'm blessed to be able to sit here and talk Dynasty Fantasy Football with all of you, with my friends, Garrett and Matt. There's a lot to be blessed and thankful for in life. In 2020, again, it was a really rough year, but we made it to the end. Let's go on to 2021. Hopefully everybody that's listening has a chance to win a ship this weekend and you come away with that. I hope everybody has a very happy holiday. Whatever holiday you celebrate, I hope you enjoy it with your loved ones or your friends. And of course, have a very happy new year. We'll be back in 2021, like we always are, dedicated to bring you as many Dynasty Fantasy Football Championships as we can. We have another dynamic rookie running back class coming up. We have a lot to discuss this offseason. There's a lot of moves, free agency, seniors, scouting. We have just as long of a rookie process as we did last year. We have about, what do you think, Garrett, 3 months to break down rookies we'll need?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys to go through especially at the wide receiver and tight end. Well, really all the positions but running back. There's a lot of guys to go through.
So if you just started listening to this football season, we are the #1 rookie podcast in the world. I'd put our analysis against anybody out there when it comes to scouting Dynasty rookies. And if you've been listening for a long time, thanks for coming along for the ride. If you joined this year, welcome to the car. It's a fun one. Just don't get in the backseat with Bishop Ranke because it's not that's not going anywhere. And I look forward to, guys, a 2021 season with Dynasty Nerds. We have a lot to be thankful here too. Launching the Dynasty GM, which is a great tool, the best tool in Dynasty. I encourage everybody to check that out still. And we have so much more to come. I'm so excited to see what the 2021 year brings to us from a life perspective and, of course, from a Dynasty perspective. And I can't wait to get in these rookies. I can't wait for the offseason to begin and for us to start talking about moves and trades and all these new episodes. The regular season is the hardest grind to get through because it's a little less Dynasty related. It's more redraft related. But the Dynasty season has just begun. We're here for you. We won't be here next week. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. We'll be back next year.
Well said. Adios.